Hi viewers, I'm very happy to meet you again on our series Telecom Legends. And today's Telecom Legend is a very, very dear friend, an industry celebrity. We all know about him. But his name itself is enough, like Sandip Das. Mr. Sandip Das has been an international CEO. He has been part of various leading organizations, and he is a person like most of people would like to hear. And we are very lucky that he has given us time today, and he's going to interact with us. Just to give a brief introduction, though, I think his career is such a long and such a celebrated career he had. But he is from in 78, like he joined DCM Group. I remember in those days, anybody joining DCM Group was like, I think either you were doing IAS or you were joining DCM Group or Tata Administrative Services. So I think it was in that category. So very good beginning of career. Then he was part of initial telecom rollouts in India, pager company in India. Then in 2007, he moved to Malaysia where he became like CEO for Maxis Group. And that was a time I was very fortunate. 2008 I visited Malaysia to meet him over there. When we launched our telecom services, we wanted to have a good tie-up with him, and that was the time when I met him first time, and my meeting was with him in Malaysia at that time. And then, in 2013, he joined Geo as MD and CEO. And then all along, he has got various awards like Telecom Man of the Year, then Best Malaysian CEO. And now, he's guiding many people. And the best is that he's a board member at Starlight Technologies Limited, which is also a very good partner company for Telecom Sector Skill Council. So, Sandeep, welcome and thank you once again for being a part of this Telecom Legends series for us.
Thank you, Arvind. I don't know why you stopped because I was completely enjoying what you were telling me about myself. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm deeply obligated to you for this fine introduction. But yes, all that is in the past, I recall with great fondness how we met for the first time in Malaysia, and our friendship has grown ever since. And I'm seeing the stellar work that is being done in the skills area by your company and organization. And it's I attended one of your skills functions, and I must say that it was truly remarkable to see the kind of groundwork that has been done. So I thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Good. So Sandeep, I think the purpose of this series is one is like introducing the legends, like who have actually made this country so proud. So Sandeep, I think most of us have seen that time 25 years back. Telephone used to be a luxury. Like in every mohalla, there used to be only one or two telephones. And then from there, initial struggle time. And today, like we are making this country proud. We are second largest as far as our teledensity is concerned. Also, like the digital revolution which we have brought, I think a lot of credit goes to, and most of our credit goes to telecom, and yes, of course, IT. And all this journey, I think legends like you have played a very important role. So one purpose of this whole series is letting the youth know that, who are the people behind this whole revolution. And secondly, also, like getting some advice from you for them so that, they can also build up great career around scaling. So telecom skilling. So one challenge, which definitely we find that telecom, initially is definitely needs a lot of effort. Initial learning is really tough. And sometimes, youth find logistics and many other professions better because they get 1,000, 2,000 rupees more. But they don't realize that in long term, telecom offers much bigger career, longer career, and in 3 to 5 years, they become technicians, strong technicians, which can contribute not only in India but abroad. So, on that, will you like to give some guidelines to the youth?
So, Arvind, I think you know, you started on something which I thought I would spend a little time on before I move to your question, because I just want to take people back into history for a while. So in 1994, I started this paging business, and I was possibly India's. I was only 35 years old at that time. I was the CEO of the paging business, and at that point of time, I think I was possibly the first private telco CEO. And again, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to beat my own chest. I'm just trying to say that I went across to one of the BOT offices and I asked for an E1 line. And the gentleman who was the general manager at that time, he had a look at the pager and he said, "Isme bolte kahan se hain?"
Mhm.
And I'm not saying this to ridicule the gentleman, but I'm just saying that that was the state of awareness that people had of modern technology because they hadn't been exposed to it, you know. And you are right. India's population was 950 million people. There were 25 million fixed line phones. Don't ask me how we contacted each other, how we fetched children from school, how did we do anything. And then thereafter, it was a struggle for 6 years because incoming calls were not free, license fees were very high. We were paying 6,000 rupees a person for license fee and stuff like that. So it was very, very difficult market. The phones used to cost anywhere between 35 to 40,000, which was a ridiculously high price in 1995, if you ask me. And then, of course, as you know, the watershed NTP 99 happened, licensing changed, revenue share happened, incoming calls became free, and then India just went forward. But I think what's very important to note is the fact that we were like a startup in a way. It hadn't been done before. And only thing was that we were licensed and we had regulatory format and we were being funded. Unlike the startups, we were being funded generously by the parent companies. But we had to roll out massive, massive networks across the whole country. We started with cities, then we became states. But the authorities, the regulatory bodies, the government, the institutions, the vendors, the operators, at some level, they all came together and said, let's improve the entire environment if this country has to become what it has to become. And you would remember that we were one of the earliest countries in the world to start doing a business at half a cent a minute. And every possible value-added services or anything that was done across the world was done first and was done at almost at the same time in India. We didn't wait for the market to mature. And all of us operators, we fought brutally in the marketplace, but we got together, formed associations, and got the context right. And that's very, very critical to understand that there was a great degree of co-opetition in a sense, where regulatory framework, the marketplace was set right. And this is very important to remember as we go forward. Sometimes we think individually about our own company and our own process, but we don't think about the fact that the entire ecosystem has to be very, very important. So on the one side, you talked about, telcos, and I'm not saying this with any bias, produce the most well-rounded leaders and CXO teams that you can ever find. Just look at an example. When we first started telco business, we had no telco personnel to hire because everybody was in the government.
Yeah.
So what did we do? So when we went to hire people for networks, we hired from the army, the signals, and from BSNL and MTNL. When we wanted front office people from hotels and banks, we got them for customer service. We got HR people from IT companies because we had to recruit tons and tons of call center people. We actually started call centers before anybody else did. For sales, we got people from box companies, from aerated drinks companies, cola companies. For branding, we got people from FMCG and marketing. Then for finance, because an enormous amount, this is a very capital intensive business where enormous amounts of capital is used and rolled. There was a need for a great deal of financial management and leverage. There were borrowings to be made in the beginning. Then there was regulatory areas where you need to have statutory compliances, so your judiciary had to be strong. When you look at all this, it's a combination of several talents. And the good part is that even the CEOs or the leadership team and the middle management, they all had to get well versed with technology. And that's a great piece, because when you look at people who have been through the telecom business, they go through the mill, so to say, the grind and the all-roundedness. So they actually become very suitable for businesses all around. They become very successful because nobody else gets such an exposure ever. At the same time, we attract people because in telecom, if I may use the expression, it is not a job for life. It is a life full of jobs. You do different things. You do different things at different times, and it's very, very exciting. So, the startups come with a high degree of rewards and a high degree of risks as well. The mortality rate is extremely high. We only talk about the unicorns, but telecom has constantly improved a lot of people. And learning and adapting is very, very much a part of the telecom system. So therefore, every telecom, if it continues to provide learning, reskilling, and education to the people, the youngsters find that a lot more profitable to their own businesses, to their own beings, and in their own process of self-actualization, versus hopping around because somebody was going to promise them loads of money. So I think, and we have done it all along. Like for example, I will tell you, when I was at Hutchison years ago, we trained people at Stanford and Duke University because, when you do your MBA, Arvind, everybody teaches you how to lead a team, but nobody teaches you the most important thing is how to deal with your boss. So the point is that we taught them a number of things. For example, in a regulatory environment, you could not go and open your business anywhere. So you had to learn how to start businesses. You had to learn in that whole process the ambiguity, because the license was the regulatory regime was changing slowly. So people don't know how to deal with ambiguity. In fact, we put together a very nice phrase called whitewater rafting. So we said, if you're in telecom, you're like on a whitewater, you have to go from point A to point B, but your raft keeps floating on choppy waters. You sometimes fall out, you pull your teammates in, you wear life jackets, but you reach from point A to B, but not necessarily in a straight line. These are not skills which are easy for people to understand unless they're thrown into the deep end of the pool. So people who come from regiments of stable companies, they find it very hard to deal with it. But once, like they said, if you go through the mill with telecom, you become hardened professionals. You learn how to deal with long periods of waiting, the tough regulatory environment, the tough market. We are just snatching business from each other all the time. We are very aggressive. So I think telecom is very, very exciting. The other thing about telecom is it's not just about the network. Like automobile business, the peripherals are very important as well. It offers opportunities to people to develop applications, systems around it. So it's on the outside of the telecom framework of the network. There are enormous amount of employment opportunities and things. Look at the entire ecosystem of employment that telecom created. The core telecom operators, the ancillary companies, the application companies, the distributors, the dealers, the retailers. Oh my God, we ran into millions of people. So this is always going to be an exciting business to be in, both in terms of attracting people, as well as in providing employability for them when they leave. So I think it's exciting. But the only thing I would say that telecom companies need to continue to keep skilling and making their people contemporary at all points of time. Relevance is a very, very important point. No matter what you have done in the past, if you are, I use a phrase very often called Monday morning obsolescence. What you thought was relevant on Saturdays in telecom is absolutely obsolete on Monday morning.
So, Sandip, Prime Minister Modi, has a vision of making India as the scale capital of the world. As such, India has been doing a lot of work for various countries, basically from managed service point of view. But definitely, I think this is the time when a lot of Indian youth will be going abroad, and telecom definitely can have an edge. And fortunately for us, with 5G and 6G, there is a lot of overlap between IT and telecom. So that is also throwing an opportunity. So based on your vast international experience, what kind of skills, what kind of training these young youth need to have so that they get best international placement?
So here I will give you another example of myself, and again, please don't read this as me beating my chest. I was the first Indian CEO to be hired by an international company, and I'm not talking of people who went out with their own companies when they went out. I'm not talking of somebody who went out with an Airtel, or I'm not talking of the Sareens of the world who were already NRIs when they landed. Somebody who was running an Indian telco was taken out to run a Malaysian multinational company. Now, it was less to do with me, but more to do with the respect the world was beginning to pay to the Indian telecom industry. Nobody had seen this scale. Nobody had seen our cost to serve. Nobody had seen the way in which we had grown our whole business. And so people wanted to actually copy those models.
Right.
So therefore, the sheer, if you see what Airtel went and did when they went to Africa and they grew there, the way Jio changed the entire digital model in India, every company abroad wanted to just duplicate the model. So how do you do it? You hire people from India. The scale was trillable. Now, second point is, if you remember, we were about 15 to 20 years behind the world in 2G, about 10 years in 3G, about 4 to 5 years in 4G, and in 5G we are almost in real time, and hopefully 6G we may start almost at the same time. So what is happening is that the lead time is narrowing. So when we started our business, we hired a lot of people from the outside because we didn't know telecom. So people would come from Ericsson, from Nokia, from other telcos, the foreign direct investors into India, the Hutchisons, the Singtels, they all taught us. Now we are ready to teach and share. We are in a different position altogether. Now, third thing is, fundamentally, we have seen with the history of the migrant Indian workers, whether it's IT or whatever it is, people are hardworking, they're tech savvy, they spend long hours in the office laboring away. And that is a great quality that people want. Now, somebody could argue and say that countries are now beginning to have their own nationals to be there. But it can't happen overnight. I think Indians can play a major role in mentoring and developing people elsewhere. That's a very important thing that they should do. Go out, don't form your own communities, because one thing that everybody teaches is skilling, which is to get new technology. But one of the most important things to work abroad is the cultural mindset. When I went from India to Malaysia, I said, I should have no problems. There are just three different kinds of communities, the Chinese, the Malaysians, and the Indians. I have worked in a multi-plural society in India. This is going to be a cakewalk. I was in for a cruel surprise.
That's right.
So I'm just saying that understanding, somebody came and told me, no, he went to Thailand, and then on the first day, he was very angry. He thumped the table, and everybody turned around and said, you can't talk like that to Thais. They get offended. You can get away with it in India. The first day I went and made a speech in Malaysia, I thought it was spectacular because there was a pin drop silence. And then I went and he said, look, nobody will say anything to you because they're a very polite society. So my point is that if you understand this cultural mindset, which has to be part of our training, Indians have a major role to play in mentorship. We must mentor people. Then we must play to our strengths. For example, people use the word jugaad in a bad way. But I use jugaad in a way where we are very innovative in the manner in which we find solutions. I'm not talking of wrong methods. I'm talking of clever methods, innovative methods, out-of-the-box methods. It comes naturally to Indians. And because we are survivors, we live in a very tough environment. So if you take all these qualities and you take the fact that Indian 5G is almost coming in real time, we are now contemporary with the world. And we are going to have, the world is our oyster, really. I feel that telecom profession, and already there are so many successful telecom guys in the middle management and senior middle management. Whenever I go to Southeast Asia or to Middle East or wherever I go, there are tons of them all over the place. So I think there is a great hope in this. We are going to be the next big provider of these kind of services and skills. And we have multiple skills. We can do branding, we can do marketing, we can do technology, we can do IT, HR, almost everything.
Right. So from network point of view, or you can say for overall growth in international market, what are the skills Indian youth should acquire in telecom, which will make them really successful? Maybe three,
See,
four you feel are the areas they should focus on.
you see, you know, I want to use a phrase, Arvind. You know, we must get into this design thinking mindset as people. And very important what I'm going to say. See, when you look at a designer or an engineer, he's trying to design a quarter-inch drill bit. But we must remember the customer is looking for a quarter-inch hole.
Right.
So we must understand that people must quickly adapt to what is required at the consumer end. Never lose focus of that, particularly in your technology and engineering skills. When engineers design things, they used to produce manuals. You remember when earlier we used to have phones, we used to have phone manuals. Now nobody uses a manual because it is intuitive. So people must learn to make the technology interface intuitive. Secondly, this is an amazing, I was just reading an article by Bill Gates, and he was saying that the greatest phenomenon that he has faced in recent times is the creation of artificial intelligence. Now, with artificial intelligence and with the amazing things that, Chat GPT and all those people are doing, and machine learning and edge computing and blockchain, the new set of people must be very, very conversant with this. And forget the younger people. Even leadership must understand what technology can do for you. That's very, very critical. It goes back to what Steve Jobs says. Customers don't know what technology can do for them. Right. So my point is that we have to all the time keep making sure that we are learning and adapting ourselves to the new technology at all points of time, because you can't rest on what you did in the past. That is obsolete, and it gets obsolete by the day. And this thing is age agnostic. I don't believe that you just hire young people and your organization becomes modern. I believe in the mindset. The mindset needs to be young, the willingness to learn, and the biggest quality that they require is curiosity. What can be done? And there are so many things you can learn from other businesses. You don't necessarily have to learn from other telecom operators. For example, when Apple built this, one night I was sleeping next to my daughter who was trying to study for examinations, and I had to wake her up in the middle of the night, and she asked me to use her computer. So in the darkness, I didn't wear my glasses. I used the plug, and the computer magically in the darkness went inside. The plug went inside because it was magnetic. And I was saying, my God, what a wonderful little feature. And Apple didn't invent it. They learned it from Japanese rice cookers, because women in Japan were getting electrocuted in kitchens. So I'm just saying that there are so many things we can learn from other businesses. And I think as long as our youth remain continuously learning, and organizations in India keep teaching them all the time, there'll be value add on both sides. Because fundamentally, we are very, very resourceful people. We learn very quickly.
So we have seen, like in 25 years, every now and then we see change. And I think in telecom, one thing which I liked and which I love giving this example, that most of the things which people or consumers see, they never ask for it. And suddenly, they get a feature and they say, wow, this I always wanted, right? And that makes you happy, whether it is apps or even WhatsApp, new things which are coming, anything related to telecom technology. I think most of the things, I don't know how they come to know, but they definitely bring a lot of good things for the consumers. So in your opinion, next 5 to 10 years, what are the big technological things we are going to see?
Well, firstly, I'll have to change my surname to Nostradamus, but but I must say that we can already see what's happening. I think there was a time when Arvind, when we were younger, and man went to the moon, and we used to say, "Arey, moon mein pahunch gaya." Now people don't ask, whether technology can happen or not.
Right.
People are saying when, not what.
Right.
So I think the way in which the usage of artificial intelligence, machine learning and all is proliferating, it is almost multiplying at multiple rates. It's going to become very, very difficult for us to, what is happening is the human mind is not able to cope with the change of technology.
Right.
But the good part about it is, and why I'm saying this to answer your question on what the future is, the good part is technology is also moving towards becoming more human. So, like somebody said, one futurologist said, we must learn to balance the material wonders of technology with the spiritual demands of the human race. So, as you start looking at technology, let's look at something like ChatGPT. What does it do? You put in a few things and it gives you a complete write up, gives you business plans, gives you poetry, gives you everything. But where the human being comes in is that, look, if we put in the same feedback, all of us will write the same business plan. But the human brain will put in value add, extra layers of intelligence on it, which will make that whole thing more wholesome. But that routine work would have been taken away. So I think we will see great impact across sectors in all companies. And I think I must give you another example of how telecommunications is actually the bedrock. Two things come to my mind, Arvind. When the COVID thing happened, there was a lot of celebration of paramedics and the things that they did. But the second most important people were us. If we had not kept networks alive, how would people have communicated?
Right.
That was the single biggest contribution. Your Zoom call happened. People were
Right.
able to see another human being and everybody kept networks alive. It was phenomenal what happened.
Right.
Years ago in Malaysia, the Malaysian telecom minister came to me and said, Sandip, for my performance that I have been put, I was very close to him. And he said, we have been ranked as the second best ministry in the world. I said, which one is the best? He said, health. I said, has the Prime Minister looked at how the Malaysian Prime Minister looked at how you've contributed towards the health ministry? Because when you make a budget for telecom, you should ask all the ministries to make their budgets for telecom because they all use connectivity. Look at what's happening with 5G. 5G is going to change the way all businesses will work.
Right.
But we tend to get very euphoric every time a new business comes. We say, "Arey, ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega, falana hoga." But it takes time. But today, the government, the institutions, the regulatory bodies, the companies, everybody is willing India to do 5G successfully. And that is already there. That momentum is there. Everybody wants 5G to succeed. So the point is, but the entire ecosystem has to settle down. And the other challenge that we will face when we go forward, sorry, I'm going away from your question, but I wanted to explain this because it is interrelated. Because with 5G, see, when you all know this very, very well, that wireless, miniaturization, digital, and virtual are all four qualities that wireless brought to the mobility brought to this world.
Right.
But the point is that we are constantly trying to create bandwidth that is going to be equal to the fixed line bandwidth, which means that we will have very low latency, we will have capacity to carry data. Now, all those things we are trying all the time. So 6G will come with more capability. But the question is, how are we going to make the environments and the ecosystem work? Companies, for example, are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this to start with, the institutions and organizations. But historically, telecom companies and institutional business has not worked too well. And that's because of the reason that it's been a issue to deal with. It's had low return on investment for the telecom companies. So they have stayed away from it. But in the future, they'll have to find a model to work with it because a hospital, an educational institution, the government, everybody will need to use 5G technology. So in the future, AI, machine learning, edge computing, blockchain, they're all going to massively impact in astronomical terms. It'll be a hockey stick kind of thing.
Right.
And I shudder to think 10 years from now where technology would be. You're already seeing it with automobiles and automotives and machine manufacturing. It's just incredible what's going to happen.
There's a very interesting section in our today's podcast. It is rapid fire round. Like people must know other side of Sandip. So I'll be asking a few questions. Just whatsoever ever come to your mind. Just
I didn't know you were going to punish me.
no. It is very interesting. You must love cricket. So Sandip, who is your hero?
Well, my first hero is actually my father. He is the greatest person I've ever met in my life, and I'm sure all men and boys feel the same way. But he's really my great hero.
Yeah,
Because of the fact that anyway, you don't have to explain, but he's my hero.
that's right. And in your experience, which is your favorite country? You have visited many countries, worked in many countries. Which is your favorite country?
Actually, I have probably two or three favorite countries for two or three different reasons.
Right.
I love England for
Mhm.
its organization. I love Japan for its harmony between technology and spirituality.
Right.
And I love Israel because of its innovative and fighting nature. I mean, these three countries fascinate me
Mhm.
absolutely, and for three different reasons.
Right. So one subject which you like to learn more even today.
Well, I'm still a student of technology,
Mhm.
and I wish I could learn more and more about technology. I wish I could even do coding and things like that. But the second thing would be that I want to learn my mother tongue, which I still don't know how to read and write, which is I have to, I'm ashamed to say that, which is Oriya.
And have you ever gone viral with any of your content?
Yes. But I don't know what the definition of viral is, because the scale of my virality of my content may not have been as big as many famous people. But
Yeah.
one or two of my blogs have done well, because when I've written about, and surprisingly, although I'm considered to be a tech man, it's about human spirits and my articles on humanity, which has actually found favor with people.
And we like to know what is your hidden talent.
It's not hidden anymore. I have a lot of hobbies.
Uh,
I sing, I play music, I write, I sketch, I draw a lot. I'm a compulsive doodler. I'm a voracious reader, and I love writing. I have now recently started writing poems and stuff, and I read a lot. And I'm very fanatical about sport. But yes, I think um, I have discovered over the last few years that I may have a little talent in singing.
I've got a lot of common friends. You also know some of them. Maybe in our time, one of the parameters for success was the successful CEO must sing for the team. So maybe I think we picked up that hobby from that point of view.
Actually, I think for me it came a lot from the fact that my family was very steeped in music. My parents, my sisters, my brothers, cousins, they all were trained classical singers, and from the childhood we learned to watch movies and enjoy good music, and we were big fans of great singers. I mean, for example, when I was younger, I was very fond of Kishore Kumar, but as I grew older, I became an absolutely fanatical fan of Rafi. And I think in many ways I equate him to Lata Mangeshkar, if not more. I listen to Western music. I'm very fond of Western classical music. I'm very fond of jazz. So my music interests are very varied. And recently I've started enjoying Carnatic music.
Oh, great. That's good. And what never fails you to make laugh?
My own stupidity.
That I think with all your success and that you've reached, I think you're the one who can afford to do it. That is really good.
Arvind, when I speak to young people, they all tell me, what are the three things that have made you succeed, and what are this? I said, look, we never look at life as one, two, three, and one, two, three for everything. What are the three things you think of before going to bed? What are the three things you eat? People like to get lists, but I keep telling them that, look, in all humility and honesty, um, when I speak to young people, I talk to them about my failures. Because whenever I've been successful, I always feel I've had a good team, and because I led the team, I was lucky. that I was in charge and we got success. But whenever there's been a failure, I've always found there's something I might have done wrong. So I feel that if I can offer my book of failures to youngsters, they'll learn a lot more than successes.
Yes. Good. Any closing remark from your side, Sandeep? Anything you would like to say to us or to the youth of this country?
Well, I'm reminded of a quote that I must tell the youngsters, which is saying that this is for all the young people. And because, Arvind, you and I had very fixed options in life when we started engineer, doctors, etc. Now the world is open. Okay,
That's
you can even be a yoga teacher and earn money. Or so I'm just saying that reasonable people, adjust to the world. Unreasonable people don't adjust to the world. But the world only changes because of unreasonable people. So if you look at so people must have the courage to do things that they want to do. We didn't have that in our young age. And there is a line on my email which says, when the sea is still, anybody can steer the ship. So that's very important for people to understand it very, very deeply. And all of us, whether the youngsters or us, etc., we are all pilgrims on the same journey. But it depends on who has a better roadmap.
right. Good, Sandeep. I think I know lakhs and lakhs of youngsters who have worked under your leadership. I think they'll really enjoy this podcast, and I'm very sure millions of youth whom we are trying to reach through this podcast in various colleges, they learn a lot from this. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and guiding all of us. Thank you very much, Sandeep.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Arvind.